Hey there everyone, welcome to this video, and this video is a step forward in our Spring Security playlist that we have been doing on this channel. Okay, so the goal here is to learn Spring Security right from scratch in a very hands-on and a practical way. Okay, and that's what we are doing. And if you're watching my video for the first time, or if you're new to this particular channel, then you should be aware that there are a few videos that are uploaded just before this one, and you can get access to all of them right in the description. So head over to the description and there you will find a link to the playlist. Okay, and that playlist has all the videos, like a set of videos before this one and after this one. So be sure to access that. Okay, and also if you wish to stay updated with more such amazing content from myself, you should hit the subscribe button there, and you should also turn on the bell notification icon. Okay, so that's how you can stay updated, and of course that's how you can support me or creators like me. That's the least you can do. Okay, because number of subscribers is what impacts my ability to bring in more such amazing free content for you all, and also to continue uploading videos on this platform. Okay, if you wish to see more videos coming up, or if you wish to motivate me to upload free stuff, you should hit subscribe. Okay, so talking about this video, we are going to cover basic authentication. Okay, so what we are going to do is we are going to learn how you can write your own set of security filters. Yes, I'll take you step by step. Okay, and don't worry, when I say we are going to write our own security filters, it sounds overwhelming, but it's actually not. I'll take you step by step as to how you can write your own security filter, and we'll understand everything line by line. Okay, and we are going to understand and experience what is basic authentication, how is it different from form-based authentication. We are also going to see how you can access secure APIs using Postman, like tools like Postman and all, which you always use when you work with APIs. Okay, so all of this we are going to cover in this video. Be sure to stick till the very end, because there is a lot of stuff that's packed in. Okay, and everything is hands-on. Okay, very minimal user slides like always. Okay, so yeah, that's about this video. Also, if you have been watching this video so far, be sure to leave a comment below. Let me know who you are, where you are joining in from, what are you doing currently, and what sort of videos you wish to see on my channel. Okay, because whatever videos I plan, I normally take a look at the user requests or the comments that I get and what viewers want to see. So you have an opportunity here to influence my upcoming list of videos there. Okay, so be sure to comment, and yeah, without a further ado, let's jump right in and let's get started with this video. So right now we have a form-based authentication enabled by default. And what I mean by form-based authentication is we have a form in place that is being used to authenticate the users. All right. But if you're working with REST API, form is not what would work for you, right? So in REST API, you don't have an interface, and you would typically be making use of tools like Postman, right? So there is one more way of authenticating users that is different from form-based authentication. It is known as basic authentication. Okay, basic, as the name suggests, is the basic way of authenticating users with the help of username and password. So let us see how can we configure our Spring Boot project to enable basic authentication. So what we will be doing is we will be first checking the code for our default authentication method. Okay, so what I'm going to do is here on IntelliJ, I'm going to enter shift 2 times, and I'm going to search over here for a file, Spring Boot web security configuration. So you will see this particular class over here. Okay, web security configuration. Okay, this is an inbuilt class that is coming in from, you can see, Spring Framework boot auto configure security.servlet. Okay, and if you're not able to see this over here, like the internal inbuilt classes, okay, what I would request you all is you should go over here in file, you should select settings, and over here, so we will have to go to build over here, and there is a option for Maven. So Maven option you'll find under build tools, And over here, you can select Maven, and here you select importing. So here, if you select importing, you're going to see these three options. So you can enable these three. Okay. So what this will do is it will automatically download the sources, documentation, and annotations for all the libraries or dependencies that you are adding. Okay. So if you're not seeing for some reason, you should be able to see after you enable this option. All right. So this is there, and I was anyway seeing this information here. You can head over to this particular class. Okay. So this is an inbuilt class. All right. And this is where you will find some source code written. And this is the class that has the method which has the source code for the default authentication method. So you can see over here, this is the default configuration, and this is how we are authenticated in a default way. So you can see over here, we have HTTP form login. By default, we have the basic authentication enabled over here. Okay. So over here, for some reason, I'm not seeing the comments appear over here. So what I will do is I'll do a Maven reload one more time. Okay. And let us see if we see the comments appear over here. Okay. So you can see over here, it's downloading Maven library sources and documentation. This will take a little bit of time, okay, but it will automatically be downloaded and it will automatically index it and show it to you, okay. But if for some reason we are not able to see, we are good then too, okay. But you can see over here, I'm able to see this over here. So after changing that setting in the preferences, I have the documentation also being added over here, okay, and code is much more readable now, right? So you can see over here, you have access to the documentation. So it says this configuration that you're seeing here, this over here, okay, this is the default configuration for web security, okay, and it relies on the Spring Security's content negotiation strategies to determine what sort of authentication to use, okay. So here, you as a user, you can see over here, you as a user can specify your own security filter chain bean, okay. So we know the concept of security filters. So you as a user have the ability to define your own security filter, right? And how you have to do it, you have to create your own bean over here, okay. And once you define that, this particular code won't be used. This is a default one, because if the user has not defined his own bean or his own way to authenticate users, then this one will be used. So it says clearly over here, this will be completely backed off, and users should specify all the bits that they want to configure as a part of custom security configuration. So I hope this is clear, okay. Let me explain this code over here. So this is a short code that is written here, okay. And as you can see here, this is the default security filter chain. It is taking in HTTP security as a parameter over here, okay. And what it is doing over here is, first line, if you see, it is saying authorize HTTP request, okay. And here, as a parameter, it says authenticate any request that is coming to the application. So any request that comes to the application is authenticated by default, okay. This is a default behavior, right? And this is what we saw. Any API or any endpoint you try to access, it is authenticated by default, right? Second thing says that there is a form-based login that is enabled with default configuration here, all right? And then there is also basic authentication that is enabled with default, okay? So form login is for web. So like we were accessing the API, right, from the web by entering the URL over here, right? So we were seeing the form-based authentication here. But if you try to access it from somewhere where there is no interface, like for example, tools like Postman. Postman does not have an interface to see the UI, right? You have to just call the API. So in that particular case, HTTP basic authentication will be used, okay? That is something that will be used, okay? And here, what we are doing is we are returning the HTTP build object, all right? So this is the default configuration, and as you can see, this is a bean over here, okay? So what we are going to do is, we are going to enable HTTP basic authentication only. We don't need form authentication. Let's take a look at what basic authentication looks like, okay? So what I'm going to do is, we need to write our own filter, because we don't want the default security filter, okay? We wish to use our own filter because we are now customizing it, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to copy this code here like this. Okay. And here, if you scroll up, you'll see few annotations like configuration. This is a configuration thing. Okay. What I'll do is I'll come over here in my project. Okay. Here, I'm going to say security config, something like this. Okay. And I'll close this. And here, what we need to do is we need to paste the code that we have copied. Okay. So I'll paste this here. The moment you paste this, you'll see all the imports also come in over here. Okay. This is done. Now what we need to do is we need to mark this thing as a bean. Okay. Because if you read over here, if the user specifies their own security filter chain bean, so you need to like create your own security filter chain bean. So this is our bean. Okay. And we need to have a couple of annotations on this class as well. So first is you need to say that this is a configuration class, because you are specifying security configurations over here, custom security configuration. So you need to treat this as a configuration class. And then over here, you're going to say enable web security. Okay. This is another annotation that you will be making use of. Okay. And this annotation is being used to specify that here you have like security being enabled over here. Okay. And what I will do is let us run this and let us see what the behavior looks like. Or wait a minute, let me cancel this. I said we are going to enable basic authentication only, right? So we don't need this line, form authentication. Okay, so I'll just disable this. Let us see what basic authentication looks like. Okay, and this is our custom security config. This is done. If you come over here, let me go to hello. Here. You can see the form is gone now and you are now being shown an alert box. Okay. You're now being shown an alert box and you can enter your same credentials, admin and demo @123, and you can say sign in and you should be able to sign in. You can see over here. You can log out. Let us see. You cannot. There is no way for you to log out. Okay. So what you will have to do is you will have to close this session here. You'll have to restart the browser here, something like this, and you'll have to go over here again and you'll be presented with this. Okay. So what I would do is I'll go over to inspect over here and you can see everything in the network tab. So I'll refresh. You can say admin and here you can say demo @123. You're seeing hello over here. You can see, and this is done over here. Right. So you can see how this particular thing worked. Okay. And these are the headers. You can even see a header over here called authorization. Okay. This is something that we'll be understanding. But for now, yes, this is working perfectly fine. And what we have done is we have created our own custom security filter over here. Let me explain this code to you all line by line. Okay. So the first line is about an annotation configuration. So this annotation tells Spring that this class provides configuration to the application context. Okay. We have enable web security. This annotation tells Spring Boot to enable web security features in the application. Okay. And it gives us the liberty wherein using this particular class, we are able to customize the security configuration. So that is what this annotation does. We have bean annotation to mark this as bean. Okay. And this annotation will make sure that this is available as a bean provider. Okay. So if you go inside, okay, here you have this first line, okay, which says that any object or sorry, not any object, any request that the application gets is authenticated by default. So we have not modified this. This is the default behavior and this is what you are also taking it forward. Okay. Then you have this line wherein you're saying HTTP basic with defaults, and this line configures basic authentication and it specifies that Spring Security should use HTTP basic authentication with default settings. Okay. And then we are returning the, you can see over here, we are returning the HTTP security object. So if you hover on this, you should see the object over here. Okay, one second. So security filter chain is the object type. So we are returning the object of type security filter chain, as you can see over here. Okay, so this is what the code looks like, and here is how you can customize the Spring Boot security. All right, you can see how easy it was. We just took the default mechanism and we modified the code a bit to enable basic authentication into our application. So now it's time that we talk about form-based versus basic authentication. All right. So right now we have basic authentication enabled, and if you like access the URL, you're going to see this output. So the first difference is between basic and form is if you try to access login over here, okay, you're not going to see the default login page over here because we have said goodbye to form-based authentication, right? So there is no by default form that is incorporated. Okay, there is no logout as well. Okay, so there's no log out over here. No logout, you'll get an error. How do you log out? So if you want to access the API, you can access. Okay, and if I want to log out, I have to just close the session. Okay, I close the browser, I restart the browser, and I try to access the browser again. I'll be presented with the login form, or not the login form, I should say login pop-up over here, which is like an in-browser alert over here. All right. Now, let us take a look at basic authentication. Okay, so I'll say cancel over here. Okay, I'll go to inspect and I'll go to network over here, and we'll observe what happens when you log in via a basic authentication method. So I'll say refresh. You'll be asked for credentials. I'll enter my credentials. Okay. The moment I enter, I get hello over here. Okay. So this is the request that went through, and you can see this is the request. I get 200 OK. If you scroll down over here, okay, you have some headers being set over here, security related. You scroll over here, you have the authorization information being encoded in the header. You can see this encoding over here. Okay, it says authorization : basic, and then you have some encrypted value over here. So this is the authorization information that is going through the request over here, right? Then you have some cookie related information. Okay, so what happens is you will be seeing JSession ID cookie that is being set in the browser. So if you click on the cookie tab, you see JSession ID and it has this value. So this is the cookie that is being set because our server is making use of cookies for session management. Okay, and that is why you are seeing this over here. Okay. And yeah, that is what the information you should know about basic authentication. Okay, so you're making use of authorization headers over here. First thing, okay, there are no inbuilt forms like you saw. Okay, everything works on the basis of alert pop-ups in the browser, and it is making use of JSession ID as of now, which you have an option to disable via the source code. But for now, it is being tracked using cookies. The session is being managed using cookies. Okay. Now let us see the form-based authentication. So if I like disable the basic one here, if I enable the form-based, and if I restart this, okay, so the application has restarted. If you come over here, okay, let me come over here. I'll keep the headers selected, and let me go to hello again. So you will be presented with the login form again. Okay, and what you need to do is I'll just clear everything off. Okay. So this is the clear button, and I need to say admin, and I need to enter my password, which is demo@123. I log in. Okay. Login is done. Now you'll see login over here. Okay. You can see headers over here. Okay. This is the response headers. Okay. You can see the cookie information over here. So this is also making use of JSession ID cookie. Okay. And JSession ID is being sent back and forth between the client and server with each request to identify the user's session over here. Okay, so you can see that happen. You have the authorization information over here as well. Okay, and you have the explicit cookie tab, like the request tab cookie and also the response cookie. Okay, and that is what you are seeing. Also, you are seeing the payload over here. Okay, so this is how the information is being sent when you do the form-based authentication. So you have the username and password being sent like this. Okay, and you have the CSRF ID over here like this. Okay, now when you are making use of form-based authentication, you are submitting credentials via an HTTP or via an HTML form, not a HTTP form. It's an HTML form. And once the user is authenticated, there is a session being maintained between the client and the server. Okay. But there was no payload tab when we were making use of basic authentication. Okay. So this is something that you need to know. Okay. So that's the difference between form and basic authentication. So what I would do is I would switch over to the basic authentication again. I'll restart the server. Okay. And if you take a look over here in the basic authentication, okay, so let me head over here. Okay, and let me open the network tab at least. Okay, so if I go to network tab, you'll see even though we are making use of the basic authentication, we still have access to the cookies tab over here, right? Which means cookies being maintained. So which means this is not a stateless API yet. So you can disable the statefulness and you can make your API stateless by just adding a line of code over here. Okay. So what I can do over here is I can come over here and here just before this line here. Okay. So I can add a code over here. I can say HTTP dot session management. All right. And I'm going to say session over here. And I'm going to say over here session dot session creation policy. So I'll say session creation policy over here. And here we have an option. Okay, so let me take this to new line, something like this. And here session, one second. So this has to be capital, session creation policy. And you can see over here, session creation policy always, never, if required, and stateless. So I'll select stateless from here. Okay. So this will make sure that our requests are now stateless. So I'll rerun this. Okay. And let us see what this looks like. Okay. So if you come over here, you have the cookies tab, cookie being set. If you refresh, let me see. Okay. We are still getting the cookies right now. I've restarted the app. Let me close the browser and open it again. Okay. So I'll come over here. I'll say admin. Or wait a minute, let me open the network tab first here. Okay. And if I head over to here, I'll say admin demo @123. Okay. Let us see if we have cookie. We don't have cookies now. You can see the cookies tab itself is gone and we don't see anything like cookies. So this is now completely stateless. We have made our APIs stateless. Okay. And we have done this with the help of single line of code. Okay. We have just added one line which says that, hey, I want my session over here. So you can see the session management should be stateless over here. And this has got us a stateless working API. All right. So I hope this was useful. Normally, when you are building a REST API, you would not be accessing the APIs like this from the browser, right? So this is not how would you access your API. So this is GET request, and that is why we are able to access it right from the web browser. But normally for post requests, browsers won't work. And usually when you're doing API development, you make use of tools such as Postman, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to Postman over here. I have it installed already. I've created a new workspace as well over here. Okay. And a new collection called security. Okay. So I'll just rename this. Instead of security, I'll call this security course over here. Okay. So what we are going to do is we are going to see how this request behaves in Postman. Okay. So I'm going to add a new request over here and I'm going to say, or instead of saying, let me just copy this request here. Okay. And I'll come over here. I'll paste it. Now, if you send this request, you're of course going to get 401 unauthorized. This is obviously because we are not authenticating it. Now, the question is, how do you pass authentication information from Postman? So for that, you need to head over to Auth over here and you need to click over here on the drop down and you need to select basic auth over here. Okay. Now, if I minimize this, you are going to be shown a form over here. Okay. Now, what is this form? This form is the form where you can enter the username and password. So I'll enter my username as admin and password as demo @123. Okay. And with this information, if I say send over here, you are going to see 200 OK. All right. And this is working absolutely fine now. All right. So this is how you can get this particular thing work in Postman. If you want to see how your request was sent, you can click on console over here at the bottom. The moment I click on console, I'll see two requests. Now these are the two requests that I triggered. The first one you'll see is 401, which means that this was the one that failed initially. Okay. And if you go to the second one, this was the one that passed. Okay. It's 200 OK. And here you will see the headers. So this is how the authentication information is being passed. So what happens is, I'll tell you, here in the authorization, you are entering your username and password over here, right? So this is a username and password that you are entering over here. Now this username and password is being converted into this authorization header over here, and the authentication information is encoded in this authorization header. Okay. And it is being encoded in base 64. Okay. So what base 64 is, so let me explain what base 64 is. So if I open Notepad here, base 64 is a format where the username and password is encoded in this format. So the format is, it's user : password. Okay. Or username : password. So in our case, our username is, what is our username? Admin : demo@123, something like this. This is what our username and password is, right? So it is being sent in this particular form, and I'll show it to you. So I'll copy this hashed string over here, encoded string. I'll copy this. We can go over to browser, and on Google you can search for base 64 decode over here. Okay, so this is a base 64 encoder decoder. You'll find a lot of base 64 encoder decoder. You can select on any one. Okay, and if you paste it over here, the copied string, and if I say decode, you'll see admin : demo@123, right? So this is what the decoding is, right? So you can see this particular string over here that you saw is nothing but the base 64 version of our username and password. Okay. So it's being encoded over here to transform it into some other form rather than hard coding it in a raw way. Okay. So this is about the base 64 thing and how you can get authentication work in Postman. Okay. And remember, you have to select basic auth from over here.